And hello. Well, 4 thumbs up. Very good. So, there's probably a couple of you there already, which I can't see, but I know there was a couple of you waiting. Anyway, it's been a while, so salute. This is a light, sparkling Verduzzo. And I've raised my monitor a bit, so you can probably see more of the crap in my office. Hopefully the rural internet is okay today. It's popping into 3 of you so far. But yeah, so the olive season. Hello, Slanty Chauffeur Bear. The olive season is now over. The olive mills have stopped squeezing the oil out of the olives. Hello, Clonic. And I just thought I'd show you guys, the the farming of the carrots was a great success with about 2 carrots an inch long. The farming of the potatoes was an even bigger success with 3 small tubers about the size of grapes. The grapes didn't grow at all on the 2 vines which we freed from the thorn bushes, but on the one vine that was, kind of being used as a shade making thing, a bunch of grapes came out of there, more than we could collect before they started rotting, really, on the one vine. So, we had some apples, we had cherries, quite a lot of cherries. Pears, I managed to only get 2 of them, like in a random tree I didn't know we had. We had a bunch of figs, but I wasn't very hopeful with the olives, although we've got quite a few hundred olive trees because, my farm had been let just go wild for at least 3 years. Hello, Hakan Ingman. So, olive trees tend to need regular pruning every year. They need the ground around the tree to be cleared of any shrubbery, even other little offshoots from their own tree. They need to have quite a lot of care taken after them. And most of my trees were, hello Carlos, were buried under brambles and just filth. Plus we got Biancospino, I don't know what that's called in English. White thorn, I guess would be the translation, direct translation, but it probably has a, plant name. As you can tell, I'm deep into farmer lore here. So I made some fig jam, one jar of it, which came out quite nice. But the surprising thing is something called rowan fruit, which I have no idea what it's called in Italian. It's about the size of a cherry tomato, and they start out yellow, but when they're ripe, they're about brown or purplish. And I picked a bunch of them with the 2 girls just off the floor, just what fell off the tree while they were still getting mature. And then a couple of weeks later, I said, well, the rest of the tree must be done by now. We went there and there was nothing because, of course, the boars, the wild pigs that come on the farm, obviously had eaten everything. But with those rowan fruit that we got, I managed to make 12 jars of jam, which one of the neighbors, that's a really cool guy actually, he makes cakes. Weirdly enough, he's a baker by just for a hobby, but he makes awesome cakes. And I told him about the rowan fruit because I'd never seen it in Italy before. He goes, "Oh, I love that stuff." So he's going to have a couple of jars of jam. But I wanted to show you the olives, which has been the great success so far. So this is a jar of olives. I don't know if you can see, but they're pretty big. I mean, I've got relatively big hands. There's my thumb for comparison. They're sort of like Kalamata olive size. They're pretty good. These are like in brine. So you just put the olives in brine and then you wait. When I first got here early this year, there was still a couple of olives on a tree. So we collected enough just to make a little jar. And I left them in there with just salt water. And at first, after like a couple of weeks or whatever, I tried one. It was like really bitter and crappy. But 6 months later, they tasted pretty good. And when I first tasted the first time, after like a few weeks, the wife just wouldn't touch them. The second time, she was like, "Oh no, I've tasted that crap before," and I was like, "No, just give it a shot." And she's like, "Oh, it's nice now." So it takes a few months, but they become really, really good. And more importantly, this is one of the 5-liter tins of olive oil, cold pressed, unfiltered. I'm still gonna put my label on it. And this stuff, if you were to buy that in a shop in like London, you can't find it. First of all, it's very, very difficult to get because of the import duties and the whole, with food, there's always more stuff to go along with it. But if you did find it, the cheapest you'd probably get that is at about £50 a litre. And we've now got enough that we don't have to worry about olive oil for the next year, more at least. I've made a couple of little 1-liter things which I'm gonna give to some friends and people that love the stuff, so just to give them a taste of it. Oh, quite a few people popped in now. So there's Backstabber, hello. And Chad, hello. And of course, Greeny Houdini, who says bonjour. She's gone French on us. And Rakir, very, very welcome. So yeah, that's the olive stuff. And I mean, we really only picked a few olive trees. The first few boxes of olives, we picked it with just the wife, the girls, and myself. And if you're picking olives on your own, it's a lot harder. But the thing is, again, if you've got a field that's been properly kept, where you've trimmed all the grass, where the trees are cleared, it's not that difficult. It's really quite easy. And I didn't bother buying the €700 electronic sort of vibrating tool that like knocks all the olives off, because you can just get them down with a little plastic rake, which is what we did. But we probably, we didn't collect, most of the trees we couldn't get to because of the brambles and stuff. They hadn't been pruned. We only pruned about like 150 or 160 trees. So, and we cleared, I don't know, maybe around the same or so. But not all the trees produced olives, because some of them are quite a lot of them are relatively young. So I think they hadn't had enough nutrients, they'd been assaulted by all these other weeds and stuff. But it's given me an indication of what can be done, and hopefully by next season's year will be pretty will be much better. And I'm very impressed with my olives. We tasted the olive oil today, because I just got it back from the oil mill today. I brought them in on Thursday afternoon, and by Saturday morning they had it all done. And that was the last run that they did. This week ends. We had a very late season, actually. You're supposed to pick olives around October, and I basically picked mine in like early December. So, but it was lucky because a lot of people had late pickings. There was people picking olives in mid-November still all over the fields around here. So I wasn't the only one, but I was the last one. But the thing that amazed me is we tasted it today, and I didn't say anything when I tasted it. I was like, man, this is better than the olive oil that my neighbor gave to me when I first arrived. He just brought over a liter of oil, and I thought, man, this is really good stuff. But my oil tastes even better. And the amazing thing is, we didn't spray anything. It's fully, completely organic, not even a hint of insecticide or anything like that. We haven't had a single bug. We're the only farm that's got, because it's been left to nature, really, we're the only one that's got fireflies. Like, there's like thousands of fireflies in spring, sort of early summer. It's kind of pretty beautiful, really. My wife had never seen them, and she was like, she freaked out the first time she stepped out in summer in the evening, and she's like, there's all these people in our land. I was like, that's fireflies, it's not torches. I was like, really? So that was quite funny. But yeah, I don't know if it's that or what, but the olives are not, the insects didn't get to them. They're really good quality. And when I tasted the oil, I was like, man, this is better than like my neighbors. And then the wife had a go, and without me saying anything, she goes, "Hey, this is better than our neighbors." And I was like, "Yeah, that's what I thought, but didn't want to say anything." So it's we're happy. It came out pretty good. It's not like you can make a living on olive oil and the few books that I've got on Amazon, but it's nice. It's like your own stuff, and it tastes good. And the jam, the Rowan berry jam, is really nice. I think I made it a little bit too sweet, so learn that for next time. I just followed the recipe instead of going with my instincts, which whenever I do that, it always works out worse than if I just go with what I think. So, I gotta send you some maple syrup, Kurgan. Maple syrup. Well, if it's actual maple and actual syrup, because you know that most maple syrup is just fake, right, Cordo? Just like most honey. Oh, that's another thing I got from these guys, that the olive mills, they make olive oil soap, so you can wash yourself with like olive oil, like the ancient Greeks, the Spartans or whatever. And they make honey. There's a local guy, like I've got like beehives. There's a guy that puts beehives on my land and then comes and collects it. But this year was terrible for honey production. That was like they all collected like 5% of what they should. But apparently this guy's got some kind of little plantation, and he's got coriander honey, which of course I wouldn't touch, because any human being that puts coriander in food is a pervert of some sort, and no doubt will end up in hell as a degenerate, because coriander is not a spice for food. It's essentially some kind of plant that is the vegetarian equivalent of hobo's ass lint. That's what I believe. So I didn't buy any of that, but they had sunflower honey, and it does taste a little bit like sunflower oil, but it's really good. And that stuff, again, that's proper honey, because the honey that you buy in London or whatever, that and I knew this even when I was in London, and I'd buy honey in the shop, even if you go to whatever Waitrose or one of the, unless you're getting imported stuff direct from a country like Italy that doesn't have GMO and all that, it's not actually honey. It's basically a syrup that just gets made up and called honey. But this stuff is actually honey made by bees. So, you take a spoonful of that every day, and you eat the olive oil, and you plant your own food, which hopefully is more than 2 1-inch carrots. You're probably gonna survive the apocalypse of the elite that are thinking of spraying all the food with their fucking COVID death trap things. Let's see, you guys are good. I like it when you guys are chatty, you're talking. Greeny Houdini says, I've been reading Alan Watts' Myths and Ritual of Christianity. That's an excellent book. I'm glad you got it. It's really good. And remember, page 98, 99, that's the mystical experience I had. And Mr. Watts described it quite correctly. Carlos says there's lots of honey made where he is in Spain. Okay, good. And Cordell says, yeah, it's the real deal. I make it from maple trees on my property. Excellent. I've got a bit left from last season, and it's pure enough. It's crystallizing in the jar. Yeah, the same thing with honey. Like the honey I bought now, it's solid. It's like, yeah, I don't know how hard or difficult it is to ship stuff to, Gayland, Canada, where I'm assuming you are. Or vice versa. But otherwise, yeah, I would definitely, if there was an easy way to do that, I'd definitely send you guys some oil for those of you that are enjoying it. Another thing that's been happening is I've been working on the physical Kurganate, obviously, with my loyal henchmen and so on. And some very interesting things are starting to happen there. Some interest from some pretty big players, which I don't like to say, oh, this will happen, that will happen. I prefer to make things happen and then sort of tell you, okay, it's happened. Kind of like when I moved here, and then I just sort of appeared and said, right, I'm now in Italy creating the Kurganate. And so there's been some interest from some pretty interesting people. So in the coming weeks, I'm going to be looking at concretizing some of that stuff. And I didn't have, if I was a millionaire, I would have just bought up a bunch of land and created a walled city myself. I didn't have that kind of resources, so I just bought my own place, and my intention was like, I'll just take over the rest, politically, socially, whatever. It's a pretty small place down here. It shouldn't be that difficult to become mayor, regardless of the corruption, etc., and so on. I get along with most people here. If I've pissed anybody off, they haven't made it overtly known. I think most people that I've had around, I've got good relationships with all my neighbors, like friendly, good relationship with the local authorities, let's say, the council people and the police, whatever, so it's a good setup. I'm too busy to run for office or anything, but who knows, in the future, maybe, So that was my idea. But now there's people that are looking at it in terms of like, hey, if we can purchase enough property around where you are, that could become an actual city. So those of you who are interested in supporting that sort of thing, please sign up for the Kurgan TV channel. If you don't know where that is, if you're on Gab or on Social Galactic, just go to my profile. There's going to be a link there. Or just go to my blog and just search Digital Kurganate, and you will find where to go to sign up to basically different series of videos. Now, I haven't slacked off. This last month, we've only been putting up 2 videos a week rather than 4. But we always knew that there was going to be periods that, you take time off. I had to do a bunch of stuff, including the olives and so on. But very interesting stuff is that one of the loyal henchmen has now created a website, which is it's called Sede Social, and it's going to be like a place where people can go and learn about Sedevacantism, proper Catholicism, and make it like it's a social network, I suppose, of people. I haven't looked at it myself, which is why I haven't launched it yet, because I just want to make sure it works and stuff. But that's coming, and then there's going to be another site, which is going to be the Digital Kurganate, which again, that's more for people to learn about stuff and find people to connect to on the Sede Social. The Sede Social is supposed to be for you guys to like use and discuss things with each other. I have also started a pretty exclusive Sede channel on Telegram, which is by invite only. I invite the people that I want to be in there, and it's going quite well because there are people from all over the world. There is, of course, the Kurgan Telegram channel, which if you haven't joined, I suggest you join, because anything relevant goes in there. And then some of the people in the Kurgan Telegram channel will get invited to the Sede channel. So those of you that are potentially, the thing about the Sede channel is I'm really inviting people exclusively that are actually Sede or really serious about becoming Sede and that I've had some interaction with, so I know they're not like infiltrating weirdos that just want to, talk nonsense or whatever. So that's... We've got a couple of new people because I've been on Gab a bit more, and I've invited whoever's there to come on the stream. So I'm probably a little bit more forgiving than I am normally, but I don't know. There's some people that are either taking the piss or I don't know. We've got Slim Shady 94 here, who just made me laugh. He says, "I like how you're very wise and intelligent, but also very intimidating at the same time." Now, mostly I think that's some little gamma sniping. But the thing is that there are some good guys that I have interacted with, that I've Skyped with and whatever, that have told me pretty much the same thing. So I don't know if it's a joke or not, but whatever, it's made me laugh. So another sip of my Verduzzo. And hello to any new visitors. Just so you know, I've mentioned on the Gab, but I don't give warnings for like gamma-like behavior. Just gets banned, and you never get unbanned pretty much. So tread lightly. I don't mind people questioning what I'm saying or whatever, but you got to know what you're talking about. So if you're going to question Sedevacantism or something like that, at a minimum, you must have read my 530-page book, Reclaiming the Catholic Church, and made cogent argument against it. So chances of that happening here are pretty much zero, so don't bother. You know, if you want to argue that stuff, suggest you go on the blog and comment on some of the posts there or whatever. But that's just a little hello to the new people that might not know that I am pretty merciless when it comes to banning idiots. The other thing is that I sort of inquired. I was quite surprised that I've asked a few people here and there. I just thought, nah. But there is quite a lot of interest in, you know, a short, brief book on how to survive the current zombie apocalypse. So I started doing a layout for it, and I'm actually, say, about 10% of the way done. So I don't know whether I'll get that finished before Christmas. It's unlikely because I've got the next 2 weeks are pretty hectic. But I'm having fun. I'm writing it as a fiction manual, because I want to put some pretty realistic stuff in there, and some of the realistic stuff is better presented as fiction sometimes. You know, good stories teach you stuff. So that's one of the little side project I want to get to. Eventually, one day, I hope to finish the Overlords of Mars third book, which has still been sitting there for years now. But, you know, slowly I'm getting the house sort of set up. One of the most loyal henchmen is sort of in and out of things, but I would, if I get his help, I want to finish painting the kids' room and the rest of the kitchen, which would be, you know, it's silly stuff, but it gives you know, finish the lounge now. The lounge has got all my books up, a nice library. We've got the TV up, although we don't watch TV. We don't have TV, but it's basically a big screen to put like films on for the kids, you know, that are chosen rather than, you know. So that's pretty decent. And slowly, as the house is getting sorted out and as some of the land stuff is getting sorted out, I have tiny little pieces of time that I want to spend, you know, making more videos for the Digital Kurganet. The next video I'm doing, that's one I've been working on for a few days actually, because although I know a lot of stuff in my head, you know, for the videos I try and make it a pretty scholarly thing, and it's the spread of Catholicism. And I need to be pretty accurate for it because, of course, most of the people watching it are probably going to be Protestants. They don't know a lot of the things that I'm going to bring up, and they're just going to assume they're filthy lies. So it's good to give them a little bit of references and context to make it really drive it home. Because, you know, Protestants are not aware that Christianity is Catholic, that popes and bishops and cardinals and all that was around for 1,000 years before the schismatics split off. And then we're still around for another 500 years before, you know, the Protestant rebellion happened. So we're hoping, I don't know if it's going to happen again before Christmas, to have a live intervention with the chief of the Gammas, the Ipsis, what's his name? The Scorpio guy, anyway. Scorpio. He's the, you know, cosmic Razza guy who's the chief of the Gammas. But yeah, I quite enjoy talking to him from time to time. So that's basically it. Now, if you got any questions, shoot them. Because I've given you a bit of a catch-up of where I'm at and what's happening and what's coming. So it's a free-for-all. You can ask whatever you want. I might even entertain some really dumb questions for a while I eat a piece of chocolate. No. Altoid PA says that you always learn some life hack or other interesting ideas from your stream, Kurt. Well, thank you very much. I'm glad it's of some use to somebody. 15 thumbs up for 16 people watching. Well, we're waiting for the thumbs down from the 16th man. all, you're a quiet bunch. Well, I hope your Christmas preparations are going well. The wife put the tree up last night, so that looks looking pretty decent. And the kids are going a little bit stir crazy. We took them out yesterday, but it was raining. But even though it was pissing down with rain, when we put them back in the car, they all screamed their head off. The little ones were like, no, no! So they've got slight cabin fever. I need to, take them out a little bit more, but the weather has been pretty shitty, so we've got enough space outside, but it is cold, and I do have we have that wood stove kitchen to put in, which I need some help with. It's not something I want to do on my own. And then I have to collect some wood, which is of course way late. I did collect some wood in the summer when I should have, but that amount of wood is going to run out pretty soon. But there's wood all over this place. I just need to literally cut it up and stack it, and it'll be dry by next season. Can you please wear the glorious Kurgan Pope hat for the E-Scorpio intervention? So sadly, my Pope hat was left in London, I believe. But luckily, I have the holy materials. You might be able to see a little bit behind me, with which to recreate them. Now you can't see this because I'm doing it from my desktop, but I finally put up my my world map. I need to put the pins back in and add a few more of where I've, what we had. It's a really nice big 2 meter by 1 meter or so, 2 meter by 1 meter 20 world map, and we'd put the little pins in. I think we'd put silver for where I had been, rose gold for my wife had been, and gold ones for where we've been together. And we've covered pretty much all the continents except Australia, which, given what's happening, we obviously have good instincts. But that's a good suggestion. If I get a chance, I'll make another Pope hat. Actually, let's be clear. It's an Inquisitor hat. It was the Kurgan Inquisition for the heretic Owen Benjamin, on which we passed sentence. And while he hasn't yet executed himself in the proper manner, I think from the voluminous growth that he has shown in his belly, I think he may be preparing for the sentence I passed on him. It's it's a 15-minute or so inquisition, one of the videos. Those of you that haven't seen it, I suggest you look at that very solemn event. I do miss playing the sax. I gotta admit, when summertime comes, I think I may just have to break out the sax again. So that's where I'm at with that. But yeah, tell me what's going on in your lives, people. While I eat another piece of chocolate. It's very disturbing to hear a man chew, so I hope it's not too bad. So Cordell says that we also need Wooly in that stream, also wearing an important hat. We must ponder this. The thing is, E-Scorpio and I already got off tangents. If we had Wooly ram into that, I can't afford to do a 6-hour stream. It's just... Hello, Henry, my old buddy. Good evening, everyone. My ancestors saw it fit to make Australia a prison colony. Good to see the old ways are still strong. Precisely. I feel for the 3 Australians that are worth anything. James Fox Higgins, a good friend of mine, And I'm generously assuming there is a third guy, but in the main, Australians, you can keep them. Backstabber says, well, a bit off topic. You feel RPGs can be a good medium to introduce people to Christian concepts? Oh, well, funny you should mention that, because my soon-to-be Guide to Surviving the Zombie Apocalypse is based on RPGs. So, yes, I think so. RPGs done correctly are a very wise teaching tool. Let me tell you a bit about my poor abusive childhood. So, I started playing Dungeons and Dragons because I was invited by a friend of a friend who knew some guy who had the books. And in case you don't know, those of you young ones who think that, playing Wing Commander is like the old days and don't know anything, because we were trading in spice and slaves when you were barely a twinkle in your daddy's eye on 32K machines, which are still the best. I'm talking about, of course, Elite, the computer game. But pen and paper role-playing games, when I was 16, out in Africa, were something that no one had. There was maybe one guy who had the original books, and everybody else photocopied those things. And so we played the first game. I think I was it was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons first of all. So I think I played a half elf that was a cleric mage fighter 3-class thing. It was just an abomination, really. But then we got into it and we started playing, and then of course we played Traveller, we played Gamma World, we played superhero games, the Marvel one, the DC one. We made up our own. We invariably had house rules. We played quite a bit of Top Secret, which we mixed in with like sci-fi stuff. So our version of Top Secret was always like Edge of Science / somewhat science fiction / somewhat supernatural stuff. And a lot of Car Wars. So, I've played pretty much we even had a couple of sessions of RuneQuest, which was terrible. I mean, that thing was like an accountant's game. You had like maybe 100 little skills that you have to have percentages worked out for each thing. It was an abomination. Fighting Fantasy game books, and then Fighting Fantasy Adventures. So played all of those. And the thing is, while we were playing those things, and I'd get my friends to come over, and my house was pretty weird. So when my dad wasn't around, which he used to go hunting for like weeks at a time, or at work, whatever, we just carry on playing all weekend sometimes. Or one of our friends' houses, we'd hardly sleep and then go to school, not having slept, worrying about our characters and whether they would survive the pull of the gas giant they were trying to like refuel from while an Imperial starship was bearing down on them. And but the thing is, for example, in physics class, we had worked out how to do the calculations for gravity-assisted slingshots, long before the physics class even mentioned vectors. So by the time the physics teacher was like, "We're going to do vectors today," we're like, "Well, we learned it ages ago." And my dad, when he did see us playing, was like, "That's all just mental masturbation. You guys are not like living in the real world." But the thing is that what you don't understand is that campfire stories is how the old people used to pass information to the young generation. And the thing about role-playing games, especially if you played them the way we did, which was absurd as this sound, we always tried to make things realistic. So yes, you've got a magic system. Yes, you've got superpowers. Yes, but we always made it realistic. So for example, in the Marvel or the DC superhero games, when you see like Superman picks up a tank and throws it, we had enough of a understanding of physics and so on to sort of say that the superpower wasn't just super strength and super invincibility, because you can have all the super strength you want, but if you try and grab a tank and crimp it, you're just going to mush your fingers to like dust, right? So it wasn't just super strength and super invincibility, it was also some weird aura that would retain the whole tank in one piece. Because again, if you try and pick up a tank by a corner of it, what would happen is you'd just rip off the pieces of metal of it. And in those games where, those games had that realism, inverted commas, because those were superhero games. But now, if you were playing, for example, a top secret game where it's just normal humans who suddenly get some weird serum that gives him super strength, he's now super strong, and he like punches through a brick wall. He does, and his whole arm is now completely fractured to crap, and it's just a swinging little appendage because, you know, that kind of realism. Even when we played Call of Cthulhu and so on, we'd like do stuff. I mean, I remember we played basically, I refereed a top secret game where it was essentially The Thing. You know, the film The Thing. It was something like that, very similar to that, set in Antarctica. And the guys that survived that, my brother's characters being one of them, in Top Secret, you've got like these skills and advantages and disadvantages, and you can get experience. So for the next adventure, his character picked traumatic flashbacks because he said, you know, the horribleness of the adventure had like damaged his brain. So, and you know, we'd come up with all this stuff. Now, the thing is that the imagination that you had to have in order to like defeat these sort of things made you really good at solving puzzles. And whether these were fantastic puzzles or real puzzles or somewhat real puzzles, the thing is it forced your brain to like think of alternative solutions, to the point where we played modules. My brother and I got so good at this that together, and it happened more than once, even in groups of people and whatever, when we were playing modules, there are certain things that in the modules, especially of Dungeons and Dragons, where they were essentially channeling you down certain paths because you'd meet certain monsters that you couldn't defeat, so you'd have to run away or get captured or whatever. And for example, there was one of them, Vault of the Drow, where one of the Drow casts this like mirror image spell where there's like 3 or 4 of them. And so you don't know which one is the real one, and you only have like a 25% chance whenever you attack them to like get the real one. And my brother, with a simple web spell, 2nd level, just cast a web, catch all of them. And so he caught the Drow with like a weak-ass little spell, you know, which was, the Drow was obviously a much higher level. There were things, I mean, we defeated, it was just my brother and I, and we were playing 2 characters each. And it was a module where you go through this mirror, and you're supposed to be on this sort of big table that's raised off the floor, surrounded by about 60 different guys with loaded crossbows pointing at you. And you're supposed to get captured there because you're supposed to surrender, because none of your characters would survive, 60 bolts of, I think, of crossbow bolts shot at them when there's only like 4 of you. Well, that didn't quite go as planned, because we knew how to use spells and stuff in such a thing that was like, wait, we came through and we've got the marching order. So we know that the cleric is in front of the magic user. So the magic user can like do his movements, right? So he rolls initiative, gets initiative, do his little spells, and he casts a wall of fire on top of the first line of crossbowmen, which they're only like 2nd level characters. And it does like 7 dice of damage. So it wipes those guys out instantly. And all the arrows that come through the wall of fire just get burned to a crisp. So none of the arrows hit us, and half of the force is depleted with 1 spell. And then we kicked ass of everybody else, at which point the game master was like, I give up. He just threw the module in the air, and he goes, well, I don't know what to do. You guys have just defeated the whole game. You're supposed to get caught here and then escape. And so we had the run of this like little pocket universe. And that sort of thing happened quite a lot. We'd be put in situations that were almost impossible, and we'd figure some way out of them. So role-playing games, if done correctly, and I mean the paper and pencil games, I don't mean the TV games, the computer games, those things are too limited. If you can get around with friends and play the old style, and again, I would suggest Traveller, original Dungeons and Dragons, which there's one book that has all the rules. It's called the Rules Cyclopedia. It's quite hard to get, but you can find PDF copies online or whatever. On Gab, my name is the Kurgan, at the @ symbol in the Kurgan, I believe. So it helps for you to figure out how to fix puzzles, and if you keep that attitude in real life, I mean, I don't know how to do any other crap when I bought this place. I'm like, I don't know, what do I know about olives? And I'm not by instinct any kind of a farmer or whatever. So it's, but it's a fun time to spend with your friends. There is a social element to it. And if you get the right group of friends and you play realistically, you play in a way that sort of, you have rules and you don't sort of cheat or and you've got a referee that also understands that the best games are the ones that have, parameters that you stay within. One game I didn't get to play because I only got it after, moved away and whatever, is the Atomic Robo role-playing game. I think that game would be hilarious because in that game, you can actually, each player can make something else happen for one of the other players or characters in the scene. So it becomes comedic. There's a lot of potential for comedy in the Atomic Robo role-playing game. And the Atomic Robo comic books are also pretty funny. Unfortunately, the guys who actually do the comics are complete SJWs, so that sucks. But Colin Brannigan says, can we get a city D&D group? Always wanted to play, but never had, since most who play now are gamma weirdos. Yeah, that's the other thing. Like the people who say, oh, I played this game. It's like Magic the Gathering came out, and that just, all these little idiots were like, I play role-playing game, Magic the Gathering with cards. No, you idiot. Unless you got a pen and paper and you have to write everything out, The current 5th edition of D&D is decent, detailed enough to be flexible enough to be accurate. Ah, you heathen. It's no Traveller though. But again, you see, Traveller as is pretty basic, so we always made house rules for it, added a few more skills. And, 5th edition D&D, no, it's too detailed, there's too much crap. The original D&D was perfect because you had, again, pretty firm parameters in terms of character classes, but a very loose way of the details of how you play them. You can invent your own little magic items. You can create things that balance things out. So, the other thing is you can learn quite a lot of maths, quite a lot of logic, quite a lot of storytelling. These are all skills that are useful. They're just useful skills for you to be able to tell an engaging story, to come up with engaging maps or castles or situations or dungeons or monsters or enemies or friends. You're basically like a film director, essentially. And the group can go this or that way, and you have to quickly adapt your adventure to what they might do or might not do. Generally you tend to sort of lead them down certain pathways, but sometimes they just go completely off tangent on, you got to be quick thinking on your feet to like keep the story flowing in a way they don't realize that they've gone completely off track. So it's, these are all social skills and logic skills that are useful. So my short answer would be sure. How would I introduce Christian concepts? Possibly playing Call of Cthulhu. Or, the only safety and sanity is in Christianity because the other occult stuff leads you to insanity and vicious monsters and degenerates and weirdos that perform sick rituals. You could play some altered version of D&D on a world where the clerics are the only ones with magic, for example. There's so many variations on the theme. You could play a top secret game where you're some kind of crusading assassin that is cursed to like perform the evil deeds of, or the necessary deeds, let's say, of the remnant of the Catholic Church to take out the imposters, Freemasons. There is a million stories. I mean, that's just literally off the top of my head in the last 15 seconds. So yeah, I think there's many ways that you can introduce all sorts of concepts through role-playing games. As for, creating a group, well, maybe on the City Social there might be people interested in that. I don't know how you'd play it. I suppose you'd either have to have really good internet, so where you're all on screen, and can see each other, like a group Zoom talk or a group Skype or something like that. I would think that would be the best way to do it. And then you just have to have honest people that actually roll dice and don't lie, or every time you've got to show what roll is or something. I did try and play, only tried the one time. There's an online Roll20 thing, I think. So I think you use Signal to like communicate the voice, and you use this other thing where the Dungeon Master creates a map and gives you the adventure and whatever, and you can move your little characters on the map and so on. But it's pretty clunky, and even though I did this when I was in London, when I had like decent internet, it was just a bit too clunky and people take a bit too long. And I was playing with adult Americans, and man, these guys were they were slow compared to I think my daughter, I played a little game with my daughter and one of the Crusaders that were here. My daughter was like, she's like 10 now, and she's good with it. She quickly gets the hang of it and goes, okay, no, I'm going to do this. No, I'm going to do that. And again, she came up with imaginative stuff that I hadn't considered. I just gave her, in the game, she was just a 10-year-old kid. I gave her some equipment or whatever. I made her like she wasn't a traveler game and she had a high status. So I said, okay, she's a noble. So she'd have probably a bodyguard and, like a little lightsaber or something. And then I said, okay, and you can have whatever other little things you want, and she sort of came up with like, okay, can I have this, can I have that? And then like one of the things that she picked is like, she had a pet bunny. I was like, okay. But she made it interesting. She really made it quite fun and entertaining. If I had more time, I'd definitely play with her and a couple of other people, adults and whatever. Like, she can play quite well with it. Okay. Henry says that we played over Discord all lockdown using a dice bot that displays the rolls. Yeah, you can do that, but I don't know. I think it loses a lot compared to like face to face around the table. That's a whole different ball game. Might be doable. I don't have the time to do it anymore. But hey, if you guys all sign up for the Digital Kurganate, if I get like 1,000 subscribers there, and you all buy my books by the pallet, yeah, why not? I might stop everything else I'm doing and do what do you call those things? Master classes in role playing, refereeing, or whatever. Why not? I do enjoy it. I actually, one of the little books that I've done is called. It's a role playing game that I've. If you Google my name or put my name in Amazon, I think it's called The Dirty Old West, and it's a very basic, simple role playing game, but I think it's sold one copy. So, but there you go. If you want a little taste of it's very gritty and quite deadly, but it's a jumping off point. I've written, I don't know, probably about at least 4 or 5 workable role-playing games from the ground up. One that I called Star Spark, which is I did that one when I was 16, and then I've developed it over time, and it is a role-playing game, but it's almost a little bit more like a board game almost, because the mathematics in it are relatively simple, but if you've got a good imagination, the storyline you can put around it are like awesome, and it's a very quick game as well. Very, you can immediately see what's going to happen. But the rule book would be, I never sort of put it out there because I need somebody with decent art skill to draw some of the concepts of how the spaceship battles work, just to give people an idea, because otherwise, okay, you can do this and you can roll the dice, you can do these numbers or whatever, but you don't get a picture in your head of what it sort of looks like. And the picture in my head is good. I know it would be very cinematic, sort of. So there was that. I've done one for called Small Wars, which is for tabletop battles, which I'll be really. Tabletop battles is one thing I didn't get to do a lot of, and it's very time consuming, but I'd love to do that stuff, because you literally have a giant table where you build like a whole scenario with like little, castles or whatever. Like you have the Zulus attacking a village, or whatever, the Arabs or the alien monsters, it doesn't really matter, Nazi Germans, and you've got your guys fighting off, but you literally move your pieces on the board. So it's kind of like a giant board game, but again, it's quite entertaining if you use your imagination a little bit. There was a really brilliant what's it called? I think it was called Orjasta or something like that. There was these guys that were doing tabletop battles and that have photographs and that do reports on their games, and they were hilarious. I don't know if that website's still up. I don't know if I could find it. So I've created like a samurai little similar type of almost tabletop game that was again very quick. I've done like house rules for like Car Wars, for Traveller, for D&D, you name it. I've done a bunch of house rules for that stuff, and I've created one which is actually pretty much finished. Again, it needs a bit of artwork or something to make it look a bit spreadsed up, but it's a quick omni role-playing game thing that you can play any scenario in, and you can put it in, in fantasy, dragons, spaceships, present day, old days, medieval, whatever. But obviously each milieu would require a little set of rules designed just for that, or the people could create their own little rules for it, which is kind of the point. So yeah, role-playing games were a pretty big part of my life, but we were never the gamma nerds that you get now that are like obsessed with power, and the referees try and kill all the players. Oh, another very funny game is called Paranoia, where the referee there is essentially trying to kill the players. But that's part of the game. That's how the game is played. And we only played that a couple of times, but again, it can get quite hilarious. And I think with a good referee that is not intentionally really trying to murder all the players all the time, but just gets the sense of the game, I think that could be even funnier. That could be even more hilarious, because the players would like, the whole point of the game is the players will end up trying to kill each other anyway. So yeah, there's like I said, if I go through my old files, I could probably revamp some of those things and publish them. I don't think there's much interest in it, because people don't read anymore, and they're all just on computers and like, oh, TikTok. So, but yeah, there's many hours of fun can be had playing role-playing games, and especially younger people, 15, 16, even 20, 25-year-olds. I think it's a positive thing. If you've been introduced to it decently by somebody, I think it's a very positive sort of thing. Maybe we should do another stream on role-playing games with Woody Ram. That could go on for days. But yeah, you can. That was a decent question, Backstabber. Okay, any other comments? Otherwise, I've been going almost for an hour. So if you've got any questions or any other weird things to mention on how to survive the zombie apocalypse, a good DM is like good training. The scenarios are just deadly enough to promote growth and investigation. Henry's going back to, I think, a few of the classes that I taught where mostly it was you had to be somewhat mentally resilient to not get freaked out. But if you were, then the class could actually become quite fun quite quickly. if you weren't mentally resilient, you tended to be afraid most of the class and never come back. Oh, the kids are just cracking me up lately. They're coming up with like some hilarious stuff. The little Viking is like, he calls his little sister Babi, and then like he's learned to pronounce that a bit better, so he's baby. But like when he's being nice with her, which is good now, he started to be a pretty good brother. He's like, "Come on, Babi, come on." And when she goes up the stairs or down the stairs, he like runs. There, goes, "No, Babi!" Grabs her by her back and just like walks her up the stairs. But they're hilarious. Ethan says, I've been hacking away on a game loosely based on Edwin Abbott's book, Flatland. I haven't read the book, so I don't know what the premise is. It gives me a lot of respect for more systematic thinkers. You and Vox have been helpful on that. Oh, well, I'm glad we could help. I don't know what Flatland is about, so I can't comment. But yeah, there's I was the is it called the Riverworld series? Philip Jose Farmer, I think, is the writer. This guy, there's like a series of books where you can basically kill yourself and you get reincarnated. There's a reincarnation. This guy figures it out. So whenever he gets in a tight spot, he just kills himself and then he reappears somewhere else. But I think there might have been a role-playing game based on that. And I think also there might have been a role-playing game based on Conan the Barbarian, possibly the Gore books, which had like slave girls in them. Oh, the Gore books are something else. There's a whole subset of people, because in the Gore books you had like basically slave girls who were like, sex slaves, and they would get kidnapped from Earth, and they would become, the Earth women would end up being the best sex slaves because they were just so submissive, apparently. And there is a whole, I found this out because I read some of the Gore books when I was about, in my late teens, because in Italy we've got a lot of graphic novels, and one of the graphic novels was called Gore, and Gore had nothing really to do with Gore, the series of books. Gore was this guy who was like dressed like a Conan the Barbarian type with a big axe, but it was set in this world which had a giant pole shift, and it was like snowy and cold. And I think I can't remember if it was Gore or another series where you had these like aliens with all these little fingers down the hands. But anyway, Gore was basically a post-apocalyptic sort of survival scenario of the last few humans that were like trying to stay alive, sort of thing. So when I first saw the book of Gore and it had a guy with a giant axe and some half-naked women on the cover, I was like, oh, cool, that's the continuation of, the graphic novel I used to read as a kid. But it wasn't. It was a pretty sort of soft porn type of fighting fantasy sort of type setup. But there's a whole subset of people on the internet that have started doing that, where the women actually get branded. It's some kind of S&M thing. It's quite weird, really. But, whatever. There's a lot of freaks in the world, so. Woolly Ram says, always wanted to try Legend of the Five Rings, a game about samurais in fantasy Japan. Yes, I have seen that. I've never played it. I don't remember if I know something about it or not. I think I may have read a module or two. It looked interesting, but I don't know the game mechanics of it, if it's worthwhile or not. Mostly I played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons and Traveller, Top Secret, Card Wars, some Gamma World, quite a bit. Gamma World was always weird because you need a decent referee there, but if you've got a decent referee, like my brother was brilliant for Gamma World. His imagination was just great, and he'd pick like these mutations and he'd come up with these like almost like tribes that all have the same sort of mutation, or at least that have quite a few of it. And it's like I don't know. He'd make a whole ecosystem out of this stuff, and it was very entertaining and very interesting. Flatland takes the Victorian class structure but embeds it in a 2D world where the individuals are polygons. It was a clever exercise in world building. I have no idea what that would look like. It seems extremely limited to me from that description, but I don't know. Willie Ram says, have you played any of the World of Darkness games, Vampire, Mage, etc.? No. That's when it all started to go downhill. All that stuff I just couldn't be bothered with. It was all crap. I did play a couple of games of Magic the Gathering with cards with friends that didn't really know role-playing games. And it was fun, you know, for like a one-off, but that's not role-playing games. That's, you know. Cordell says, what do you think of ASL, Kurgan? My buddy and I played, and I know Vox does as well. I usually have my buddy run the game since he's quite a bit more literate than me. Advanced Squad Leader. I think I have maybe set that game up once with a friend, and we never got around to playing it. I don't like it because I think it's too autistically American. Car Wars is autistically American, but Car Wars is relatively simple. And what I mean by autistically American is, in business, the Americans always worry about the bottom dollar, and they're always counting the pennies, and they're always figuring out the numbers. It's all about the numbers. Car Wars is all about the numbers. You know, you've got a 150-pound guy, and how much can he fit of him in the car? You know, in Car Wars, I am a, let's see, I am a 25. Yeah, I'm a 6 hit point character in Car Wars, because the normal character in Car Wars weighs 150 pounds, and you've got to take his weight into account when you construct the vehicle that he's going to be driving. So, but you can, you know, they'll only have 3 hit points, but you can get extra hit points to a maximum of 6 hit points, but then that adds 25 pounds of weight to your character. So, you know, for 225 pounds, you've got a 6 hit point character. I'm a tiny little bit, you know, I'm a bit less than 225 pounds. I'm about, you know, whatever, 15 pounds less than that. But I'm a resilient bastard, so I would be a 6 hit point character. So my weight would take up another 75 pounds from the car stuff, you know. And that's how Car War works. But it's pretty, again, the parameters are pretty simple, so the amount of accounting that you got to do is pretty simple once you get into it. But Advanced Squad Leader is like, it's just painful. It's not fluid. And I don't like games that are that mechanistic to the point where it really grinds the game to a halt. I like games that can flow and that are pretty quick. You know, Star Wars, by the way, another pretty decent game, which uses only 6-sided dice, but a bunch of them supposedly, depending on the thing you're doing. That's actually got pretty decent mechanics. You know, and I've actually got the Star Wars game sitting over there, I think. Yeah, there you go. I'll show you some. There. You know, these are next to an Aramaic Bible, so you can tell the importance. So that's the Car Wars Compendium, which I had to get off eBay. That's got pretty much all the rules of Car Wars in one book. I like that stuff. This was just a gift from work. This is the original Star Wars, which I still prefer. And the thing about the original Star Wars is the way that the ships work and the shields that work. It's actually really good and pretty deadly. Then this is the updated 2nd edition of Star Wars, which is like all one book and it's got everything, but I quite like the source book. This is the rule cyclopedia. That is all you need to play proper Dungeons and Dragons. And then this is the Atomic Robo role-playing game, which I never got to play. I just read the rules, and I enjoy it. They look like really fun rules. But where's this? Oh, there you go. here I've got a printout of the mutations from the Gamma World rule book. This is the original one, I think. It's probably some PDF that I bought or somewhere along the line. But this is from the original book. And I have both made and played with homemade rules of other people that of Gamma World, which makes it again quite interesting. And the thing with Gamma World is you never know what's around the corner, because there's so many weird mutations, and plus with home rules you can add other weird mutations, that it's a very dangerous, deadly sort of game. Oh, another game I really quite enjoyed, although the mechanics are a bit shit, because the characters, the weight of the characters, the size of the characters, and the hit points of the characters are completely off. And I think it's because Americans are really quite fat, so they just assume that everybody's really heavy. But then the way they're drawn in the comic books, you know, they're like super cool looking people, but oh, this guy weighs 280 pounds. Wait, no, that's not a normal human weight. And it's Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. It's a role-playing game based on a set of comic books by a guy called Frank something or other, called the Cenozoic Era. And basically what it is that the whole world went underground because of, you know, the apocalypse, COVID, whatever. And then they pop out 500 years later and they've got steam-powered Cadillacs for whatever reason. And now there's dinosaurs all over the place. And it's a weird sort of setup, but it's cool, you know. And the guy knows his rifles a little bit, because the 460 Weatherby is considered like the best gun you can have. So I think the guy who wrote that stuff is probably like a 1970s, 1980s hunting type of guy, because those are the guns that I grew up with and that my dad's got. So, you know, there are obviously much more modern firearms now. So it's a quite it's an interesting. I like it. I like the idea of dinosaurs and big guns. So it's just cool. Oh yeah, Cordell says that Advanced Squad Leader, it's a no retards allowed sort of game. Yeah, I know, but it's kind of only autists, severe autists allowed kind of game. Woolly Ram says that without D&D, video games and fantasy novels, I would have had no motivation to learn English or math. There you go. Cordell says that autistically American, as an American, that's very accurate. Well, I'm glad you understand what I meant. You know, it wasn't meant as a dig. It was. Backstabber says, do you have anything to diffuse people who believe that there's secret code or history in Bible scripture the Catholic Church's hiding? Dan Brown sort of bullshit. I would go the other way. I'd tell them to dig deeper. Dig deeper, man. Yeah, Dan Brown, yeah, read all his stuff, man. Go for it. Tell me all about it. What's the 15th secret of the Fatima appearance? Well, what is it? What's the secret code, man? You know, drive them into it. And when they're really neck deep in it and they've gone off the edge, make fun of them, because they have to realize their own stupidity before they can get out of it. That's my take on it. Woolly Ram, that's the Star Wars game where you don't play a Jedi? I think I played... The only time I played a character... No, not the only time. I played characters that had the Force, the mystic power. But in the first instance, I was playing for the Empire, because of course the Empire is, you know, correct. It's sending order to the galaxy, and all this diversity of weird freaks, aliens, and tentacles. You know, they just need to know their place. So he was a dark Sith guy. And then another one that we sort of made house rules for, where they're in one of the resource books, there was these like sort of monks. They're kind of like monks that like train and whatever. And I was like, these dudes sound like they wouldn't have the Force. So it's kind of monks that were like neutral. They weren't like Jedis or evil dudes, but they had like force powers. And another thing but actually what I really enjoyed playing the most was, again, it's one of that source book, I think. There's something about some weird hunters that use like force spikes. So it was like he was one of these guys that had become a bounty hunter with a force spike. So yeah, we tend to pick the road less traveled when we roleplay characters. C18 says role-playing games are the best way to have a party with friends. Yeah, exactly. Well, unless you've got pretty girls, then you can have a different kind of party. But, if you're like 15, 16, 18, 20, whatever, and you just want to have a good time with your buddy, your male buddies, that's a cool time. There's also the Battletech TTRPG. Yes, Battletech I haven't played. I think I saw the rulebook once. Can't remember much of it. I think it's probably not as Americanly autistic as Advanced Squad Leader. Well, almost nothing on the planet is. But probably a little bit more complicated than Car Wars. Maybe not. The thing that was a little bit of a downer on Car Wars was the maneuvering of the cars. In the original Car Wars, it was like 1/10 of a second. In the revised compendium, it's like 1/5 of a second, which makes it go a little bit quicker. But it's still, the moving of the cars is a little tiny bit clunky, but sort of you kind of have to have it. Although we played Car Wars very much without necessarily having a lot of Car Wars stuff, actually cars with cars. We did have the original, car battles, but it wasn't in the arenas. It was usually out in the wild on a highway or whatever. And we actually had role playing. Our characters, like Car Wars is deadly. You've got 3 hit points, and a heavy handgun does 2 hit points of damage. So, a rifle does 3. So you get hit, good shot with a rifle. Body armor is another 3 hit points. So you got a double-barreled shotgun. You just pull both triggers like Mad Max style, and that's one dude down. So, and even if you've got like a buffed, 6 hit point character with the best armor, that's 12 hit points. So he can take a couple of shots from like a rifle, and then his armor's completely gone, and then another couple of shots from a rifle and he's dead. And if you've got like armor piercing bullets, or God forbid he takes an actual shot from a car weapon, he's pretty much smeared on the wall. So Car Wars is a deadly game. But the character I played in Car Wars I played that character for like over a year, probably a couple of years. I don't know if you guys know the Jonah Hex comic books, but they eventually phased out the actual cowboy comic books, and there was only a 17 comic book run of Jonah Hex being teleported to the future as one of the greatest fighters with some weird machine, which was basically Car Wars. He got teleported into Car Wars. So I played this character who was Jonah Hex, and I started him out, from nothing. But again, some like house rules, and we determined, we agreed with the referee that my character would only use single action handguns. But that because of that, and because he had like lightning reflexes as one of his innate abilities, as his skill in the handgun went up, once he got past a certain point, he could fire faster than a semi-automatic pistol. Which, weird as that sounds, that's actually true. If you look at the fastest guys on draw and firing, there was a TV series done by Stan Lee before he died about like finding superhuman people. And there's the guy that does the single action revolver, and he pulls that thing out of the holster, fires twice, blows up 2 balloons, and it does not even sound like 2 shots. It doesn't sound like bang bang. It just sounds like bang. It's like one longer bullet sort of thing, which is he shoots faster than you can in a semi-auto pistol. So and that character, you know, then you can get clones in Car Wars. So he had a clone, and then they arrested the clone instead of him because they thought he was dead. So they activated the clone. So it was just, they get really messy. But we get, you know, we were role playing. We weren't just like bashing cars around, and that's what made it like good. Wally Ram says BattleTech is World War One with mechs and tribal gene engineered Mongols. Oh, okay, that's not the BattleTech I was thinking of. I was thinking of the mecha gigantic robots. Um, I'm thinking of something. I don't know that game. I don't know BattleTech. What's the what's the mechas? The giant mecha robots. There was a game for that. Cool setting, but no one has the brains or balls to use it right. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It sounds really weird. I wouldn't be able to tell unless I could see the mechanics of it. Well, this has descended into a role-playing game stream, but that's good. So how many, I'm just curious, of the 16 people here, how many of you have actually played pen and paper role-playing games? Because I'm assuming you're all quite a bit younger than I am. And while I wait for you to answer, I'm gonna eat another piece of chocolate, rum and raisin. I think I need to change the title of the stream once it goes up. It's the role-playing game stream. Okay, maybe you're all just getting ready for bed or wherever you are on the planet. Oh, Henry Martin, he's played pen and paper. So out of 15 of you, that's like 1. Backstabber says, I have once, suck at it though. That's the other weird thing. You know, I played twice with 2 different of the Most Loyal Crusaders. They both sucked at it, and one guy's like 40, the other guy's like 26. But they just, the concept was so like new to them. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know like how to behave. I was like, this is weird, man. Like my 10-year-old daughter, like natural, you know? I don't know. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's an innate thing. I don't know if it's because lack of imagination. I don't know if because of the way they were raised. I really couldn't tell. I know that Italians in general have got like a better imagination than most other countries that I've been into. I remember one of my dad's Japanese karate instructors told him, like, if we Japanese had the imagination of you Italians, we'd rule the world because, you know, we're disciplined, we actually get shit done. You guys just invent and imagine everything, but then you end up creating fuck all. You know, not wrong, really. Cordell says that he has once or twice. Colin Brannigan has only played video games. Okay, you're probably a younger guy. And Aincro says you're right. BattleTech is giant mix. Okay, so I don't know. Maybe it's Woolly Ram that's confused. I don't know. Or I'm thinking about, you know, there was is it called BattleTech? There was some kind of manga where it was just giant, you know, sort of what's that? What's the film with all the mecha droids or whatever? But it's in the future, sort of in a sort of post-apocalyptic future. It's kind of like Car Wars, but with giant mechas. It's not World War One, so if I think there must be 2 different games. I'm guessing. Not lately, sadly. Finding non-gammas to play with is a chore. It is indeed. Merg Magalmaxis says, I've played some D&D and some sessions of a friend's homemade game systems called Chronicles of War. Cow, yes. Okay. You know, sometimes some home game systems are pretty cool. It just depends, you know, if you get on with your friends or not. And if you understand, for us, it was always about the realism. I know how weird that sounds. What are you talking about, realism in Gamma World, where you've got mutants that have got sonic attacks and telekinesis and whatever? Yeah, but there are still parameters of reality. You see, if you understand that objective reality is a thing, whatever fantastic scenario you can find yourself in, you can adapt to it and you can realize, okay, well, if that's real, then this must follow. And there are a few films that do a decent job of that, where it's like, you're just going along and you think it's a normal film, it's a normal setting, and then all of a sudden there's vampires in it, or some unbeknown alien thing is happening, or whatever. And like most people in those type of scenarios, one thing I hated about The Walking Dead was like the people in it were such retards. They'd get eaten by slow zombies because they're like, oh, didn't bother to check before they opened the door. It's just like, what? I mean, I swear to God, in The Walking Dead, if like me and my brother were suddenly dropped into the Walking Dead world, unless it was like in the middle of like 10,000 zombies or something that were just surrounding us. But if you just like dropped, even without any weapons, just like on the outskirts of some medium-sized town, within a week, we'd be like set. We'd be like, oh, they're slow walking zombies. They're attracted by noise. You just got to be a bit careful, and then you can be a king. Once you got a handgun on you, well, and world's sky's the limit. But the characters in the Walking Dead were just such retards. And then after they killed the hot blondie and the Daryl guy that he was like with that younger like hot blonde chick, after that I completely lost interest. But it was totally frustrating the whole time I was watching. It was like, these guys are morons. And then you look at the guy that created the series and you're like, oh, that's why. Because that guy would be food, in a zombie apocalypse. So Battletech is Nights in Space that takes place 300 years after the fall of Space Rome, Starleague, that then gets gate-crashed by totalitarian space Mongols, the clans, 50 years later. It also has a bit of medieval dynastic politics, and Comstar is the Spacer Guild, the Illuminati mixed with a telecom company. Ah, yes. Well, TSR also went down the toilet. That was a company that was producing some of the D&D stuff. A Blackmail Bear says, I'm scared of millions of explosive drones. There you go. I actually refereed a game like that of Traveller set in a tech level 15 war. So where all the soldiers had plasma weapons, portable plasma, or portable fusion guns, I think. And they just get airdropped on this planet where the other side also has fusion guns. And it was a shit show. I mean, it wasn't particularly fun to play or referee, because the weapons are so deadly that it was literally a roll of the dice whether you survive or not. Like, half the players, like when the players died, I just said, all right, you're, now another player in another team, and like you have the same skills or whatever, just to make them carry on playing. But it was like at the end of the session, it was like, so what do you guys think of that? And they all said like, that was brutal, man. It was just like, you're just a pawn and it doesn't really matter. You could just get wiped out at any moment. And it was very much a sort of Beaches of Normandy type feeling, I guess, which, is a good thing to experience if you've never had it. It was like, oh my God, it's like, wait, what? If you get hit by a fusion gun, that's it, you're gone. It doesn't matter, your armor, your super armor, just done. So, and everybody has them, so, because they're all tech level 15. Another thing that I thought would be interesting to do would be to have a couple of like high tech level guys with like ghost guns or whatever, either get stranded or whatever on some low tech planet where the natives are just trying to go after you and wipe you out. Sort of like, Sentinel Island type setup. Sentinel Island is a real place, by the way. I think those are quite interesting. and and sometimes vice versa. Oh, another game that I really enjoyed is it's called Maelstrom, and it was created by a 15-year-old kid, but it's a brilliant game. Very realistic. The wounds take weeks to heal. It's set in medieval times, but there is magic, but the magic is very difficult to, you have to be an old wizard to like make it work a little bit. And I've had this thing in my head for years of playing a game where the thing about the Maelstrom is that when the wizards cast magic, there's a tiny chance that they can cast this weird spell that could just fucking open a portal in space and time and just nobody know, anything can happen. You can blink out of existence, you can appear somewhere else, you can travel in the future. But he doesn't give you any rules for that. He only gives you the rules for the medieval fighting. And, there's clerics and there's some supernatural things. There's like priests, Catholic priests that can hold off ghosts and stuff like that. But it's very realistic with some element of the supernatural, which I think is great. And he's got a whole section at the back on like plants and like what plants can do to like heal you and whatever. But the thing that I've wanted to do for like many years with playing adventure, where it starts out with your characters in the Maelstrom, and then there's a Maelstrom, and you get bing, you appear teleported into a traveler spaceship. So you're a bunch of medieval guys who just pink appear in an imperial spaceship, and I just want to know how that plays out. I don't know how it would play out, but I think that would be a great game. Does infantry even make sense after a certain technological level? No, essentially, I think we've reached that stage now on our planet where, the Americans are very loath to put any boots on the ground. The problem with that, of course, is that you can never control the populace because, again, say, and they learned that in Vietnam, or they should have, they didn't, but they should have. Say I am Iraq or Vietnam or whatever, and you're like going to drone the shit out of me and carpet bomb me and whatever. Okay, so I'm just going to have to survive that shit. And if I survive that shit and I don't get, droned or whatever to death, and I get lucky, then at some point you're going to have to put people there. And the minute you put people, no matter how armored they are, no matter how many like super tanks they have and armor and like, satellites that can tell you what's going on, sometime, somewhere, one of those guys is just going to be a little couple of meters away from his mates and he'll get stabbed in the neck or blown up by an IED. And it's guerrilla warfare all the way. 4G warfare is superior to 2G. Like 2G warfare can cause massive damage, but a 2G warfare nation cannot win against a 4G warfare nation because it's guerrilla tactics that never end. So unless you completely exterminate everyone in that whole nation, which sort of defeats the purpose to some extent, and you lose the moral war anyway, because if you do that, anybody watching will be like, hey, like look at what's going on in Australia now. They're essentially trying 2G tactics on a population of brainwashed cucks for the most part. So the forces of evil are sort of pretty much winning there, and yet the rest of the world is looking at it going, what the fuck? I hope that shit isn't coming here next. Which it is. It's coming everywhere. If they see that it works in one place, they'll push it everywhere else. But, like somebody asked on Social Galactic, oh, what do you think is going to be the response? Like the people that are going to push back are going to be third world countries. You try and implement the shit that they're doing in Australia in Nigeria. Good luck. You're going to have your parliament building stormed. And in fact, what happened in Australia? The only people that actually burnt down a government building? The Aborigines. So, there might be a few European nations that eventually will go that way. France, they've had those yellow jackets there for like 2 years. When are those guys going to get tired? They're just too civilized. If all the yellow jackets that have demonstrated just got together one day and said, right, we're just going to storm all the buildings of government, regardless of how many cops, army, or whatever you got there. Well, guess what? The French government would be out and Macron would be swinging from a tree within hours. ours. But you know, the population of the Western world has been civilized almost into oblivion. So who knows? Henry Martin says, this is literally my traveler character, a feudal baron's son, taught brutal medieval level politics, poison, swordplay, etc., taken by a merchant ship as a hostage to seal a trade deal. Well, there you go then. Yeah, you know, you do have that in Traveller because you've got different tech levels. So you could have a tech level 2 barbarian who's now on a spaceship. There's a brilliant book by Paul Anderson, I want to say, called, I can't remember the name, but that's the setting. So these aliens land in a medieval town, and they just get their ass kicked by a random bunch of knights. But the guy who wrote that is historically brilliant. He knows the history of Catholicism really well and how Catholic knights of that era would act and behave. And he does a really good job of it. He also understands that, you know, people in the 1300s or the 1200s, they weren't dumber than us. Not only were they at least as smart as we are, but they were of a much sterner stuff. They were much tougher mentally, spiritually, absolutely war machines compared to, you know, the average man now. Ankru says, I completely missed board games RPGs. None of my friends were into them. Most I've ever played was a partial game of Gloomhaven on Tabletop Simulator. I don't know what that is. But look, even if you haven't got friends to play with, buy one of these books and read them. You know, you can play by yourself. I know it sounds a little bit masturbationary, but you can create your own characters and do your own little adventure and see how that works out by rolling your own dice and stuff. I know it's, you know, the game books, the fighting fantasy game books, which you can still buy, I think. That's what they were for. You know, a guy who didn't have anybody to play with, he gets a book and he rolls a dice, and then he has to make choices in the book, and it takes him to certain sections of the book and not others. And it's quite at least it gives you a flavor of it. If you've never played the role-playing game book, I suggest the quickest way that you can get a sense of it, buy a fighting fantasy book. You can get them online now. You can get them on an app. You can get all the original fighting fantasy book on an app on your phone, and play it there. You know. Wooly Ram says the technological limits of empire, which is why the power that be used brainwashing and social engineering. Well, it's a pretty logical conclusion. I mean, if you read my fiction books, of which this is a novella set in that same universe, but like a couple of few hundred years in the future. You know, I've thought about it, and it's like, well, what would happen? Okay, if everybody had anti-gravity machines, would you nuke planets like they did on Mars? No. Because, well, once everybody can nuke a whole planet with like one machine, well, everybody's going to be like, dude, anyone that does that, we're going to wipe out your entire species. Everybody's just going to bombard you because it's like, these guys are too fucking dangerous. So if you can't do that, then what happens? Oh, well, then it's subterfuge. Then it's like mess with their DNA, mess with their minds, control them before they even get to have the spaceships, which is potentially what's happening on our planet. No reason why that couldn't be the case. Paul Anderson Cooper, says Andrew Martin. Yes, and I think it might be called the High Crusade or something like that. Wooly Ram says there is a subgenre of sci-fi called HFY, Humanity Fuck Yeah, where humans are the stuff of nightmare to aliens, intelligent social apex predators from a high-gravity death world. Okay. Oh, another pretty brilliant game that I only played a little tiny bit of was Cyberpunk. I also played once or twice Shadowrun, which I think sucked. Shadowrun was crap. It's like elves and orcs in a modern setting with guns, and it's just shit. But Cyberpunk was good, and Cyberpunk was based essentially on the anime stories like Ghost in a Shell. It was a good role-playing game. Scratch that, but I think I've read that story. Okay, maybe it wasn't Paul Anderson Cooper, but I think it was Paul Anderson, and I think it's called The High Crusade. It's a really good book. I really enjoyed it. I don't know. It might have been, I might have it on my Kindle. I think it was on my Kindle. It wasn't on. Let me just see. It's an old book, but good stuff. Let's see if I have it on my Kindle. Let's see. Well, Henry's going to bed, and I think I will be doing the same in a couple of minutes. Let me just see what I've got here. Home library. Oh, Star Viking was also a pretty decent story, but or series of stories. Oh man, I've got so many books in here. End of Day, no. The High Crusade, there it is. Paul Anderson, The High Crusade, that's it. Yeah, it's a really fun book. Backstabber says, do you happen to know Metatron, by the way? He's an Italian who's into history and HEMA. I don't know what HEMA is. You've told me before. I don't know who Metatron is. Is he on YouTube or what is that? And what's HEMA? You've told me that before, but I can't remember. I'm going to Google it right now. Let's see. What can I get here? La, 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 la. Okay. Let's see. Metatron HEMA. See if anything comes up. Okay. Oh, historical martial arts. Triumph German longsword. No, I don't know this guy. But Italians have got a very long history of fencing. They always do very well in the fencing. So no, I don't know who he is. But I've got some books on fencing, like original fencing, because I used to fence, believe it or not, and I was actually a natural. The guy who taught me was a retired coach for the British Olympic team, and you know, life, just one of those things. I was 16 at the time, and he told me, if you carry on training, in 4 years you're going to the Olympics. And the first time I picked up an épée was at a competition for an international competition in Birmingham, which was a qualifier for the Olympics. And the guy who came second, I'd never picked up this weapon before. It was the first time I was using an épée. The guy who came second in that thing, his first bout was with me. And, you know, he nailed me 5-1, but I got the first point. And he nailed me 5-1 on the wrist, which is, you know, the technically perfect, and yeah, the pistol grip and whatever. I used the proper, correct, you know, sword grip. But I got the first point, and I got it on his chest in the heart after I did a flesh, and I got him. And he was like, what the fuck? How did you do that? And then he looked at me and was like, okay, now that I know that you're dangerous. And, you know, he like didn't let me do anything after that and kicked my ass. But in a real duel, he'd be dead. So, and like I said, he came second in the whole competition. An Argentinian guy. I looked him up, not to, I think he became a banker or something. He was a very well-off guy at the time. You know, he was a young dude, but he was very, obviously came from a very wealthy family. Okay, anyway, I've been going for almost, well, it's gonna an hour and 40 minutes, so I'm gonna say good night, but thank you very much for making me reminisce about role-playing games and fencing and all sorts of things. And I still love my olives. I can't wait to taste one of these big fat dudes. They're They're nice ones. I like them. Good night all. Thank you all. And oh, don't forget to keep supporting the Kurganet, because there's going to be big things here. We're actually planning to really create an actual town, sort of a full-blown resistance of actual community that is beyond just 10, 20 guys. So it's if that ever kicks off, if you want to be a part of that, keep abreast of it, support it, because like it or not, we need money to create these things. And so support the digital Kurganet, buy my books, whatever. It's not about putting money in the bank for me. I don't believe in that now. It's about creating, being able to have enough money behind me to push forward the things that I need to push forward with the council, with engineers, with plumbers, electricians, etc., etc. Zoning situations, maps, and that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the background. So yeah, please support it if you can. And remember that I'm a lot more active on Gab now than I am on Social Galactic. And see you next stream. God bless you, everyone.